The House Judiciary Committee hearing room grew quiet as Chairman Gerald Nadler's words lingered in the air. The seasoned congressman from New York had just made what many would later call one of the most inappropriate remarks ever made in a congressional hearing. "Perhaps Mr. Patel," Nadler said, his voice laced with clear disapproval, "you should go back to Uganda before lecturing this committee on American national security." The racially charged remark, aimed at former Department of Defense Chief of IE Staff Kash Patel, sparked instant tension throughout the room. Lawmakers on both sides looked visibly stunned, with several Republican members beginning to voice objections. But before order could be restored, Patel, whose parents immigrated from India and who had risen to the top levels of the U.S. national security structure, calmly adjusted his microphone. He showed no sign of anger, only a composed resolve that immediately commanded attention. "Mr. Chairman," Patel began, his tone steady and deliberate, "before I respond to that remark, I'd like to share something with the committee that I hadn't originally planned to bring up today. What followed was more than a response to a personal slight. It was a moment of deep patriotism and quiet strength that reached across political lines and made a lasting impression on the national dialogue. Before diving into that powerful exchange, please take a second to like this video and subscribe for more analysis of the key moments shaping America's political scene." Kash Patel's path to that hearing room was a clear example of the American dream, born to Indian immigrants who came to the United States seeking opportunity. Patel had built a distinguished career grounded in dedication and public service. After earning his law degree, he worked as a public defender, then moved to the Department of Justice as a national security prosecutor handling terrorism cases. His expertise brought him to Capitol Hill, where he served as senior counsel for the House Intelligence Committee. Later, he held major roles in national security, including Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council, eventually becoming Chief of Staff to the Acting Secretary of Defense. Throughout his career, Patel was known for his depth of knowledge and professionalism, not partisan rhetoric. Even critics of his policy views acknowledged his firm grasp of national security and his commitment to defending U.S. interests. Congressman Nadler brought his own extensive record to the hearing. In office since 1992, he chaired the influential Judiciary Committee and was known for his legal expertise and occasionally confrontational style. He had played a prominent role in several major investigations over the years. The hearing in question centered on the national security implications of how classified documents were handled, an increasingly controversial topic. Patel was invited to testify due to his extensive experience managing sensitive government information. From the start, the session was tense, with partisan lines clearly drawn. Democrats pressed Patel on actions taken during the previous administration, while Republicans emphasized his qualifications and background. As the discussion continued, Nadler grew visibly irritated with what he saw as Patel's vague responses on specific documents. His tone became more abrupt. The situation escalated when Patel began outlining the complexities of classification decisions, drawing from his background across multiple government agencies. That's when Nadler interrupted with his now infamous remark, "Perhaps, Mr. Patel, you should go back to Uganda before lecturing this committee on American national security." The statement, implying that Patel's background made him less American despite his service, sent shockwaves through the room. Several members looked visibly disturbed. Some began raising formal objections. At that moment, on the verge of a breakdown in decorum, Patel asked to reply, setting the stage for what would become one of the most impactful moments in recent congressional memory. As Patel began, the room remained still. Even those prepared to object waited to hear his reply. "First, Mr. Chairman," Patel said with calm clarity, "I think there's a misunderstanding about my background. My parents immigrated to the United States from East Africa, specifically Kenya, not Uganda. Though we're of Indian origin, they came here with very little pursuing the American dream that defines our country. He paused, making eye contact with Nadler, who now looked noticeably uneasy. But the correction in geography is less important than the larger meaning behind your comment, Patel continued. The suggestion that I should go back anywhere else shows a fundamental misunderstanding of American identity. Without raising his voice, Patel reached into his pocket and placed a worn photo on the table. This is a picture of my father taking his oath of citizenship in 1980, he explained, his voice carrying a trace of emotion. He and my mother held down multiple jobs while raising me and my sister. They taught us that in America, effort and integrity matter more than your birthplace or background. Looking around the room, Patel said, I still believe that. That's why I've spent my career working to protect this country, exactly what we're here to talk about today. Patel's pivot back to the issue at hand was strategic, showing he cared more about substance than the insult. Regarding the topic of this hearing, he continued, my views on document classification are shaped not by any foreign influence, but by my roles as a federal prosecutor, a congressional advisor, and a national security official overseeing our most sensitive operations. He then held up a document. These are the training materials I helped create for classified information management across federal agencies, standards that received bipartisan support. By offering expertise instead of escalating the situation, Patel helped reset the tone. Several Democratic members appeared quietly relieved at his measured approach. But he wasn't finished. Mr. Chairman, he added, still composed but direct, I want to address your comment one more time. Throughout my service, I've worked with Americans from every background, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, and more. In national security, what matters isn't where you come from. It's your loyalty to the Constitution and your fellow citizens. He leaned forward slightly. At the Pentagon and National Security Council, I worked with people whose families had been in the U.S. for generations, and others like me, first-generation Americans. What brought us together was our shared goal of keeping this country safe. Nadler tried to interject. Mr. Patel, I think we should return to— With respect, Mr. Chairman, Patel replied firmly. You opened this topic, and I believe I'm entitled to respond. Nadler gave a small, reluctant nod. The belief that someone born elsewhere or whose parents came from abroad is less American or less fit to speak on national security isn't just offensive, Patel went on. It contradicts the very principles that make this nation unique. He gestured toward the committee. Look around. Some here come from long American lineages. Others are immigrants or their children. That diversity, paired with shared purpose, isn't a weakness. It's our greatest asset. Then, unexpectedly, Patel took a different approach. Mr. Chairman, I don't believe your comment reflects your deeper values or those of most people in this room. We all say things in frustration. So rather than focus on that moment, I suggest we return to the real national security matters we came here to discuss. Patel's decision not to escalate or demand consequences took many by surprise. Even some Democratic lawmakers nodded in quiet agreement. Nadler, clearly moved, cleared his throat. Mr. Patel, he began, then hesitated. You're right. My comment was out of line. I apologize. The rare public apology from a chairman known for standing firm marked a noticeable shift in the room's mood. Patel had just turned a heated confrontation into a moment of clarity and leadership. He acknowledged it with a simple nod. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Returning to the committee's questions on classification protocols, Patel calmly shifted back to a thorough explanation of the systems and interagency processes involved. He described specific procedures for handling various categories of sensitive data, referencing established regulations as well as practical insights from his own experience. His ability to speak authoritatively on complex national security issues without relying on notes stood in stark contrast to earlier remarks by Congressman Nadler suggesting he lacked the qualifications to speak on such matters. Members from both parties engaged with his testimony, asking detailed questions that Patel answered with clarity and expertise. What had nearly devolved into partisan disorder was now redirected into a focused discussion on key national security topics, largely due to Patel's composed response. As the session progressed, the atmosphere shifted noticeably. Lawmakers, who had seemed ready for confrontation, instead posed respectful, content-driven questions. Patel continued to concentrate on substance rather than politics, raising the overall tone of the hearing. Congressman Jim Jordan, the ranking Republican member, eventually addressed the earlier controversy. Mr. Patel, I want to commend you, not just for your knowledge, but for the exceptional professionalism you showed in response to what I believe was a highly inappropriate remark. Your poise speaks volumes. Other Republican representatives echoed this sentiment. Some even suggested formal action against Nadler, but Patel repeatedly redirected the conversation to policy matters, avoiding any escalation. Notably, several Democratic members also acknowledged Patel's restraint. Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, a senior Democrat on the panel, posed a question about classification reviews, but began by saying, "Mr. Patel, I want to thank you for the professionalism you've shown today under difficult circumstances. It reminds us that national security should go beyond political lines." This bipartisan recognition of Patel's measured response to an offensive remark marked a rare instance of unity within an often divided committee. As the hearing drew to a close, Chairman Nadler addressed the incident again. "Before we adjourn, I want to reiterate my apology to Mr. Patel," he said, sounding more sincere than during his earlier acknowledgement. "My remark was inappropriate and does not reflect the values of this committee or of Congress. Mr. Patel's service to our country deserves respect regardless of any policy disagreements." Patel gave a respectful nod. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I hope we can now focus on the national security issues that impact all Americans." By the end of the session, something unexpected had occurred. Members from both sides approached Patel, not just to shake hands, but to engage him on the security matters he had discussed. What could have become a headline-grabbing racial incident was instead reshaped by Patel's response into a rare example of constructive dialogue and professionalism. Reporters who had initially planned to cover a partisan clash found themselves writing about a rare show of composure and purpose in a political setting. As Patel exited the chamber, surrounded by members from both parties eager to continue the discussion, the stark contrast between the session's opening and conclusion was clear. What began with one of the most inappropriate comments in recent congressional history ended with a demonstration of character that defied political divisions, driven entirely by Patel's choice to respond with principle and focus, not outrage. The impact of the exchange extended well beyond the hearing room. Within hours, video clips of both the offensive comment and Patel's calm reply circulated widely on social media and news sites, generating millions of views and sparking extensive commentary across the political spectrum. Major outlets covered the moment with headlines like "Dignity in the Face of Insult," "Patel's Response Draws Bipartisan Praise," and "Turning a Racial Remark into a Lesson on American Values." Political voices from both ends weighed in. Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro tweeted, "Regardless of your politics, Patel's response was a masterclass in dignity and patriotism. This is how you gain both the argument and the moral upper hand." Liberal host Rachel Maddow opened her program with, "We witnessed something rare today. A person facing an ugly moment, responding with such grace and focus that the entire narrative changed." Patel's handling of the moment became a model for effective communication. It sparked broader discussions about immigrants in public service and the meaning of American identity. Opinion pieces with titles like "The Americans Who Came From Somewhere Else" and "Patriotism Beyond Birthplace," What Patel's Response teaches us appeared in publications across the country. For Patel, the hearing marked a major elevation in public visibility. Media outlets from across the political landscape requested interviews, many of them specifically interested in his story as the child of immigrants who rose to top national security roles. In his first post-hearing interview with CBS News, Patel stayed true to the tone he had shown in the hearing. "My focus remains on the national security matters I was invited to discuss," he said. "These issues affect every American, regardless of background, and they deserve our full attention." When asked directly about Nadler's remark, Patel once again refused to provoke division. "Chairman Nadler offered an apology and I accepted it. We all have moments we wish we could take back, especially under pressure. What matters now is continuing the important work of protecting this country." His restraint further bolstered his public image as someone who placed country above self-interest or political gain. The exchange also prompted reflection from Congressman Nadler, who faced criticism from both constituents and fellow lawmakers. A week later, he released a more complete statement. "My comment to Mr. Patel was inexcusable and inconsistent with the values I've stood for throughout my career. I've reached out to him personally to express my sincere regret and am committed to ensuring that such language is never used again in congressional proceedings." This more thorough expression of accountability, uncommon in today's political climate, was widely credited to the respectful way Patel had handled the initial offense. His dignified response made it difficult to brush the incident aside as mere partisan rhetoric. Most importantly, the moment became a national reference point in conversations about who defines American identity and how public servants should engage, especially under pressure. Immigration Service and American Identity. Patel's measured response to the congressional incident found a lasting place in discussions about American identity. Schools began using clips of his testimony in civics lessons focused on citizenship and respectful public dialogue. Diversity trainers in both government and corporate environments highlighted it as a model for handling offensive remarks with professionalism and poise. 1 month after the hearing, Patel was invited to speak at the Kennedy School of Government on the topic of national security service in a diverse America. The event attracted a full audience that included individuals from across the political spectrum. In his remarks, Patel expanded on ideas he had first mentioned during his testimony. "America's greatest strength lies in its ability to include the talents and viewpoints of people from different backgrounds," he said. "In the national security field, I've seen firsthand how varied experiences lead to stronger analysis and smarter decisions." He went on to say, "Tying American identity to race or birthplace isn't just ethically wrong, it's a strategic mistake. Unlike some of our global competitors, the U.S. can attract and integrate talent from around the world. That diversity gives us an edge we should embrace, not question." By framing diversity not just as a moral value, but also a strategic advantage, Patel's message struck a chord with both conservative security analysts and progressive voices. 6 months later, a bipartisan group in Congress invited Patel to accompany them on a fact-finding trip to Asia, specifically seeking his insights on security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Photos of Patel, standing alongside lawmakers from both parties as they met with foreign leaders, underscored how his response to the Nadler incident had helped him rise above partisan divides. For many Americans, especially immigrants and their families, Patel's calm and principled conduct became a powerful example of upholding dignity when faced with prejudice. Community groups and advocacy organizations often cited his example when promoting respectful civic engagement and public service.